So we are on passage 2, it's a research passage. We're in test 61C. There are 2 to 3 research passages on the entire test. This is the process of going about analyzing data. So let's remember our DRC approach. Research means to read, not carefully read, but you're comparing multiple studies. You want to know the differences. You might be comparing processes, different ways in which they went about something, like a lab report. Look for the processes and the difference between the studies. You don't have to carefully read because often it actually functions more like a data passage where you're just looking at the information. This particular research passage actually is more data-like than research. So we recognize this is a research passage because it says study 1, it says study 2, it says study 3. So you're going to quickly skim and see what's going on with the differences in the studies. If you have time, it might help you to read the intro to orient yourself. Oftentimes it's not necessary, but it looks like they're looking at different reflectance and wavelengths. And so it looks like you have several different types of wavelengths, something S's and an SO2 and a lot of S's. And then figure 2, it looks like you're looking at different observations. Study 2, time, because reflectance and wavelength doesn't change, right? Reflectance, there's my dog, wavelength, reflectance, wavelength. So the reflectance and wavelength is the same every time. This one is a Pelee crater floor, so probably volcanoes, different crater floor, and over here we have plume data. So wavelength, reflectance again, so large and small plumes. You don't have to really understand it, just know where everything is and kind of what the differences are between them. Probably 30 seconds to a minute is all you should spend on the understanding the passage before moving to the questions. So now we're going to go through the questions. Are the wavelengths used in study 1? Put your finger on study 1, always find where you're going. So there's study 1. As the wavelength of the light increases, so find wavelength. So as it increases, make sure you're going the correct way, look at the numbers. The reflectance, okay, so we're looking at the y-axis of the S allotropes, so the S allotropes will be all of these, and of SO2 to which the following. So, okay, so the S allotropes all increase. See how the lines all go up? So it means increase only. The SO2 is this one, and it increases, then decreases, so your answer has to be G. Question number 9. According to study 3, put your finger on study 3, make sure you're on the correct one. Compared with the corresponding average reflectance for small plumes, so average reflectance, small plumes, that's the dotted line. Large plumes, so that's going to be the solid line, have an average reflectance that is. So we're saying large plumes are what in compared to small plumes? There's the large plumes, and they are always lower. So C. Number 10, according to study 1, put your finger on study 1, the reflectance, so we're looking at the reflectance again, the y-axis, of the white S, so white S, at a wavelength of 0.4, I think that's micrometers. So 0.4, draw a line up till it hits white S, is closest to which the following reflectance, and it's going to be 0.2, so your answer is H. Number 11, according to study 1, so put your finger on study 1, and study 2, the crater floor of the volcano Pelee has a reflectance that is most similar to. So we're saying that these lines are most similar to which the following S allotropes. So those lines most likely match brown. So your answer is D. This is an if, suppose, why question, means you have to think a little bit. If the average reflectance for large plumes and small plumes have been measured at 0.61 in study 3, so study 3, those reflectance would have been closest to what? So wavelength, that's at the bottom, our x-axis, 0.61, so let's put it right there. If they've been measured, so we'll start with large plumes. The reflectance will be about 0.5, so G or H. And then small plumes would be about 0.9, so your answer is H. Number 13, according to study 1, so finger on study 1, white S has a reflectance of 0.98 at a wavelength of 0.6. That is just telling us that what we see is true. So at 0.6, it is 0.98. This means that white S reflects what? So you either have to have a knowledge of reflectance, or you can find it in the reading in this case. Reflectance, it says, is the fraction of light striking a surface that is reflected. This is actually a pretty common vocabulary term that you'll see come up in ACT science fairly often, not every test, maybe once every 3, 4, 5 tests. And sometimes they give you the definition, but more often than not, they do not give you the definition. So you have to know that the reflectance is the amount of light that is reflected away. So 98% at 0.6. Notice choice D says 98%, but that would be of all light. So not all light is at a certain wavelength. So your answer is B. So here's our answers all together if you need to double check. 8 is G, 9 C, 10 H, 11 D, 12 H, 13 B.